So we have John Sinopoli with Synagex. So John, come on down. A round of applause for John, please.
Always kind of intimidating to present at a advanced manufacturing event and talk about cybersecurity, right? I'm here. I'm the wet blanket in the room. Wah wah. Here's all the exciting stuff. Also, it represents some risk. So just a quick introduction. So I spent a solid 16 years working for a company that's based out of Massachusetts called Berkshire Bank. Extra exciting, I was a banker. I grew up in IT at Berkshire Bank, and over the course of their growth, got exposed to a lot of technology, obviously a lot of compliance. We were a growing bank that acquired 2 to 3 banks per year, and regulation was a pretty big deal, right? I think we actually had an FDIC auditor that had an office right next to mine as I was leading an IT department and trying to acquire companies. So the whole department was on watch at all times. And so imagine working in that environment and thinking about cybersecurity as we're trying to advance technology. About 6 years ago, I started Synagex. Synagex is a IT managed service company. Also specializes in cybersecurity, and over the past few years has been hyper-focused in manufacturing, especially as it relates to the DoD supply chain. And that was a pivot that was unexpected. When we started the company, I absolutely expected that we would sell to banks and insurance companies, and what happened was we saw a need in the manufacturing space. CMMC regulation is a big challenge in manufacturing, and I think from the clients and the experiences that we've had across the state, it's pretty clear that it's just really a tall thing to try to understand. If those of you here and remotely own businesses, you have all you can do to focus on running your business, making your products, Industry 4.0, and thinking about being more efficient and introducing robotics. The idea of complying with 110 cybersecurity controls, right? And the idea that that's going to threaten potentially your livelihood is a tall, tall order. So Synagex specializes in trying to make that easier. And we do that in a number of ways. If you could, next slide, please. Next one. So I'll just dive into this a little bit. I wasn't sure what the audience was going to be today, so bear with me on some of these slides. This one I borrowed from a friend. It's intended to scare you if you haven't seen this one already. This is a picture of an American-made jet, and also a Chinese-made jet that look awfully similar. And I don't know that it's been proven, but it's a little bit of speculation, but it's highly likely that there were some cybersecurity issues here that led to maybe some of this issue. So this slide is intended to scare the crap out of you, so that the rest of what I'm going to talk about is way more exciting. All right, next slide. We like to think about cybersecurity in terms of risk, right? I think in our industry, there's a lot of ways companies like ours can talk to businesses about cybersecurity. Yes, we are very geeky at our core, but I think to really kind of understand and make this concept English and something that is digestible for a business owner, this is a nice way to think about it, right? So whether you're working for the DoD supply chain, a bank, or a commercial manufacturing business, there is a mission-critical asset at the core. It could be design documents, product. Right now, right, we need to think about these things in terms of layers, and this is how we like to talk about it. Not only do we need a wall, we need a moat, we need a fence, we need patrol, we need armed sentry on the top of the wall, right? And if you approach it in this way, the idea is not that any one of these layers is going to stop a cyber threat from occurring. The idea is what you want to do is if one is infiltrated, we can contain, quarantine, respond quickly enough so that it doesn't hit the mission critical asset, right? Another way to think about this, if that mission critical asset is a piece of data and these layers of risk on top of it are things within your company, right? We're talking about physical controls, locking doors, right? Badge access, cameras, data. Can this data be hacked? Can it be compromised by a hacker? Applications. There are applications that access your sensitive information, and is that stuff secured, right? How do we have basic passwords securing applications? Are folks on mobile apps accessing those insecurely? Of course, right, networks, endpoints, and humans. Humans, business owners, executives in companies, we all have access to highly sensitive mission-critical assets. That is a very high-risk layer that is very much on the outside, right? It's very vulnerable. So in thinking about how we look at risk, we think about it in these layers, not so much one flat concept of cybersecurity. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, here's where, so I asked my Chief Information Security Officer to help me come up with a couple slides for this presentation that could concisely sort of hammer this point home. So bear with me. An analogy, right? So consider a family in this 1970s Chevy, right, as your core data. And we're thinking about this with a risk mentality. Think the rainbow, right? And we got to think about, so if I need to get this family from A to B, what are the risks in this 1970s Chevy to that goal? I mean, we have tires, right? If the tire blows, it's going to be an issue. We have a driver that could be a potential risk. We have mechanical pieces in here that could be a risk, compromising sort of that mission critical situation, right? Probably a much smaller number of things here, but albeit risks. Next slide. Now introduce a new world, an autonomous vehicle, right? We thought that was good for this forum. We in this vehicle now have GPS, we have LiDAR, we have cameras, we have sensors, right? We have radar sensors potentially, we have computers. A lot more elements to this vehicle that represent risk. Awesome stuff, right? I don't know about you guys, but I can't wait for this stuff to happen. But all risks to our mission, right? And to our assets if some of this stuff fails, potentially. Think about that in terms of IT and system. What we want to do, kind of skip into the end here, is to try to isolate some of these things that are potential risks in these layers and harden those layers in ways that make it really hard for threat actors to compromise the mission, right? So again, back to the analogy, if we lose our radar sensors here, we're still going to be good. We're still going to get to that end goal, and our mission and our assets are not going to be compromised. Okay, so just to, I'm sorry, I missed a piece here, just to correlate, so how this sort of relates to the manufacturing floor, some of these sensors, LiDAR, GPS, correlation to some of these shop floor Industry 4.0 concepts, right? Awesome stuff, right? OT, right? IoT devices, industrial control systems, all things that are part of shop floors. We need to head in that direction, but additional vectors to protect. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. I know we're tight on time. I guess just quickly, I wanted to mention some real-world experience. I've had some good conversations today about this topic. We spend a ton of time working with manufacturing in the state and the DoD supply chain, doing risk assessment, gap assessment against CMMC guidance, and it's very complicated. Like I was talking about. At the beginning of those conversations, I always get, John, great, you've convinced us, you're the subject matter expert on this baloney. All I want to know is how much it's going to cost, how quickly am I going to get this stuff resolved, right? And basically, can you skip to the end? I think I understand that notion, right? Business owners want a black box fix to this cybersecurity problem, and the challenge is, I think we're at someday we'll be able to get closer to this with technology. But the challenge is, it can be really personal, right? If you think about all of these risks, and you think about what it would take to take a black box to fix all of those risks for any given business. Remember, I talked about things like physical controls, locks on doors. If you're working with sensitive information, controlled unclassified information, is it paperless yet, right? Which machines is this critical data traversing? Which devices, endpoints, humans are interacting with it? And so that makes it a challenge. Obviously, with a lot of the great technologies we're talking about today, there's a way to minimize that risk, but we can't eliminate it. So what we try to do with risk assessment is to simplify the equation, and to the degree that we can provide a black box with people, process, tools, coaching, consulting, Synagex does offer that, but even that is not totally comprehensive. There's a stake with the business, and there is a cost. The key is to identify those things and work with someone who understands the business and the cybersecurity risks so that you can come up with a solution that's affordable and attainable in the time constraints that you have. So good conversations today. Also, just to note, because we brought up some innovation, I'm having some conversations with some colleagues at MIT about how, for startups, right? This is a huge challenge for startups if we want to sell directly to primes or DoD. How do we overcome some of these things? We don't have even $30,000 to spend on CMMC compliance. And there's been some pretty interesting conversations on how potentially to create some hoteling space in facilities, potentially like this one, where folks could accomplish some of those things and be in compliance enough to work with a prime. I think as time goes on, right, some of those things will become more apparent. So anyways, wrap it up. Cybersecurity, right? We believe no matter what, whether it's compliance focused or not, complete a risk assessment with a trusted partner, evaluate the impact of that operational technology, industrial control system environment to your environment. We want to mitigate those risks, and to do that, we believe you should have a really strong relationship with someone in your own IT department that understands this stuff, or an MSP like ourselves. Start with that risk assessment and build a strategy. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, our next presenter, back to the virtual world.